Marcus Chen wiped the grease from his hands and looked at the broken mining drill. 3 weeks alone on this rock, and everything was falling apart. The mining station on Kepler 442c was supposed to be simple work. Fix the machines, keep the ore flowing, and try not to go crazy from the silence. He grabbed his coffee and walked to the observation deck. The twin suns were setting, painting the rocky landscape orange and red. It was beautiful in a lonely way. Marcus had volunteered for this job because he needed the quiet. After the chaos of the Mars colonies, a remote mining station seemed perfect. That's when he saw the fireball. A ship was coming down fast, too fast. Black smoke trailed behind it as it crashed into the canyon about 2 kilometers away. Marcus dropped his coffee and ran to the equipment shed. He grabbed his emergency kit, a portable scanner, and the old hover bike. If someone was alive out there, they wouldn't be for long. The crash site was worse than he expected. The ship had hit the canyon wall and bounced 3 times before coming to rest upside down. Metal was scattered everywhere. The hull was cracked open like an egg. Strange technology sparked and hissed in the wreckage. Marcus had seen many ships in his life, but this one was different. The metal looked like it could bend light. The engines used some kind of crystal array he had never seen before. But right now, none of that mattered. Someone was trapped inside. He heard a weak cough from the cockpit area. Marcus crawled through a gap in the hull, following the sound. A woman was pinned under a piece of collapsed ceiling. Her armor was dented and broken. Blood ran from a cut on her forehead. She looked up at him with sharp green eyes. When she spoke, her voice was rough but strong. "Leave me. The ship will explode soon." Marcus shook his head. "Not happening. I'm an engineer. I fix things. That includes people." He studied the metal beam that had her trapped. It was heavy, but if he could find the right leverage point... Marcus pulled out his multi-tool and started working on the support struts. The woman watched him with surprise. "You should run," she said. "When they find this wreckage, they will kill anyone who helped me." "Who's they?" Marcus asked, not stopping his work. "My enemies. Was a warrior. There was a betrayal. I barely escaped." The beam shifted. Marcus got his hands under it and lifted. "Can you move?" The woman pulled herself free. She was tall, probably 6.5 feet, with muscles that spoke of hard training. Her armor was unlike anything Marcus had seen. It looked ancient, but was made from materials that seemed decades ahead of human technology. "My name is Lyra," she said, trying to stand. "Marcus. And you're hurt pretty bad." He helped support her weight. "Can you walk?" "I must. The ship's core is damaged." "We have minutes before." The explosion knocked them both down. Heat washed over them as the ship's remains scattered across the canyon. Marcus covered Lyra with his body until the debris stopped falling. "Well, that settles the transportation question," Marcus said, helping her up again. "My place isn't fancy, but it has medical supplies." They made slow progress back to the mining station. Lyra tried to hide how much pain she was in, but Marcus could see it in the way she moved. By the time they reached his workshop, she was leaning heavily on his shoulder. Marcus cleared his workbench and helped her sit down. He activated the medical scanner and frowned at the readings. 3 broken ribs, internal bleeding, and something that looked like burn damage from energy weapons. "This is going to hurt," he said, pulling out a surgical laser he had modified for emergency repairs. "I have endured worse," Lyra replied. Marcus worked carefully. He had learned field medicine during his time in the colony wars, but this was different. Lyra's biology was almost human, but not quite. Her blood carried extra oxygen, and her bones were denser than normal. Still, the basics were the same as he worked. Lyra told him about her escape. She had been traveling with a small escort when they were attacked by ships she thought were allies. Her guards died protecting her while she ran to the escape pod. You fight like a warrior yourself, she observed, watching Marcus repair a nerve that had been severed by shrapnel. I fight like an engineer, Marcus replied. Everything has a solution if you look at it the right way. He sealed the worst wounds and started working on the internal bleeding. The medical nanites in his kit were meant for human biology, but Marcus made quick adjustments. A little extra programming, some modified protein markers, and they should work on Lyra's system. What are you doing? She asked, watching the tiny machines enter her bloodstream. Teaching robots to fix you from the inside. Don't worry, I've done this before. On your own species? On whatever needed fixing. Marcus checked the scanner again. The nanites were working. You should rest. Your body needs time to heal. Lyra looked around his workshop. Tools hung from every surface. Half-built machines filled the corners. Spare parts were sorted into careful piles. You live alone here? 3 years now. Good work if you like quiet. And you save crash strangers often? Marcus smiled. First time. But like I said, I fix things. That includes people who fall out of the sky. For the first time since the crash, Lyra smiled back. You are a strange human, Marcus Chun. Yeah, I get that a lot. Marcus set up a cot for her in the corner of his workshop. The medical nanites would need 6 hours to finish their work. By morning, she would be strong enough to move around normally. As Lyra drifted off to sleep, Marcus studied the pieces of technology he had pulled from the crash site. The materials were incredible. The power systems used principles he could barely understand. Whoever Lyra really was, she came from a civilization far more advanced than humanity. But advanced didn't always mean better. Marcus had seen plenty of overcomplicated systems fail because they couldn't adapt. Sometimes the simple solution was the best solution. He looked at the sleeping woman. Tomorrow, he would start working on getting her home. But tonight, he had mysteries to solve and technology to understand. Marcus Chen had always been curious, and Lyra's arrival had just made his quiet life very interesting. Marcus woke to the sound of metal being moved around. Lyra was already up, examining the pieces of technology he had salvaged from her ship. Her movements were smooth and strong. The nanites had done their job well. Feeling better? He asked, starting the coffee maker. Much better. Your medical machines are remarkable. They adapted to my biology faster than our own systems would have. Marcus handed her a cup. Human engineering philosophy. Make it work, then make it work better. Your turn now. What exactly are we trying to fix? Lyra led him outside to where he had laid out the larger pieces of her ship. In daylight, the technology looked even more impressive. The hull fragments showed no welding marks or joints. They seemed to be grown rather than built. This was a personal transport, Lyra explained. Fast, well-armed, but not meant for long journeys. The power core was damaged in the attack, and the navigation system was completely destroyed. Marcus walked around the debris, taking notes on his tablet. What's your destination? The nearest Imperial outpost is 4 systems away. But without faster-than-light capability, that journey would take decades. Imperial outpost? Marcus looked up from his notes. Your military? Lyra hesitated. I serve the Empire, yes. My rank is significant. That's why my enemies wanted me dead. Marcus nodded. He could tell there was more to the story, but pushing wouldn't help. Instead, he focused on the technical challenges. Show me how this power system works. For the next hour, Lyra explained the basics of galactic technology. Their ships used crystalline cores that channeled energy through quantum fields. The navigation systems relied on star maps that were updated in real time across the galaxy. Everything was connected to vast networks that shared information instantly. Impressive, Marcus said, studying a damaged crystal array. But what happens when the network goes down? The network never goes down. It has redundancies built across thousands of worlds. Right, but what if it did? Lyra looked puzzled. Then ships would be stranded. Why do you ask these questions? Marcus smiled. Because your ship is stranded right now, and the network can't help you. We need to think differently. He spent the morning examining each piece of technology. The galactic systems were elegant and powerful, but they relied entirely on external support. When that support was cut off, they failed completely. Human systems were different. They were built to work alone when necessary. I have an idea, Marcus said over lunch. We can't rebuild your ship exactly as it was. But we might be able to build something better. Better than Imperial technology? Lyra sounded doubtful. Different. More adaptable. Marcus pulled out his sketches. Your power core is damaged, but I can supplement it with fusion cells from the mining equipment. Your navigation system is gone, but I can build a new one using human star charts and adaptive algorithms. Lyra studied his drawings. This would create a hybrid system. Human and galactic technology combined. Exactly. The best of both approaches. They worked together for the next 2 weeks. Marcus showed Lyra how human engineers approach problems. Instead of following rigid protocols, they improvised and adapted. When one solution didn't work, they tried another. When materials weren't available, they made substitutes. Lyra was amazed by Marcus's creativity. He turned mining lasers into weapon systems. He used gravity manipulators meant for asteroid processing to create artificial gravity for the ship. Most impressive of all, he built a backup navigation system that could work completely independently. Your people think very differently than mine, Lyra observed, watching Marcus jury-rig a sensor array from spare parts. How do your people usually solve problems? Marcus asked, not looking up from his work. We follow established procedures. We consult with experts. We use proven methods that have worked for thousands of years. And if the established procedures don't work, then we find experts who know better procedures. Marcus laughed. No wonder your ship couldn't adapt when it was damaged. Your whole civilization is built on the assumption that someone else has already solved every problem. That's not entirely fair, Lyra said, but she was smiling. Our methods have created an empire that spans the galaxy. I'm not saying they're bad, just limited. Marcus connected the last power coupling. Human civilization is only a few centuries old. We haven't had time to develop perfect procedures for everything. So we learned to improvise. As they worked, Lyra began sharing stories of her life. She told Marcus about battles she had fought across the galaxy. She described worlds with floating cities and others covered entirely by machines. She spoke of political intrigues and ancient alliances. Marcus noticed that her stories revealed an unusually deep knowledge of galactic politics. She knew trade routes, military strategies, and the internal workings of dozens of alien governments. For a warrior, she seemed to spend a lot of time in meeting rooms and command centers. You must be pretty high-ranking, he said one evening as they tested the new power systems. High enough? Lyra replied carefully. Let me guess. Admiral? General? Some kind of special forces commander? Something like that. Marcus could tell she was being evasive, but he didn't press. Everyone had secrets. What mattered was getting her home safely. The modified ship began to take shape. It looked different from the original, more angular and functional. The hull now included human armor plating that could self-repair. The weapon systems had backup power from 3 different sources. Most importantly, the new navigation system could operate completely independently of any galactic network. It's not as elegant as your original design, Marcus admitted, stepping back to admire their work. No, Lyra agreed. It's better. The ship's computer systems were a hybrid of human and galactic technology. Marcus had programmed them to learn and adapt instead of just following preset commands. When Lyra tested the navigation system, it began immediately updating star charts and calculating optimal routes. This is incredible, she said, watching the computer create new solutions to problems it had never encountered before. The system is thinking for itself. That's the idea? Human technology is built to handle the unexpected. On their final evening together, Lyra sat in the pilot's seat of her rebuilt ship. Everything was ready for departure. The power core hummed with steady energy. The navigation system showed multiple routes to Imperial space. Marcus, she said quietly, I haven't been entirely honest with you. I know. You know? You're not just some warrior or military officer. The way you talk about politics, the way you give orders without realizing it, the fact that someone was willing to destroy an entire escort just to kill you. Marcus shrugged. You're somebody important. Really important. Lyra looked at him with surprise. And you don't care? Should I? You crashed. You needed help. I fixed what was broken. That's what engineers do. Most people would want to know who they were helping. Most people aren't engineers. Marcus handed her a datapad. This contains all the modifications I made to your ship. If you need to explain the changes to your technicians, everything is documented. Lyra took the pad and studied his notes. They were detailed and precise, explaining not just what he had done, but why he had done it. Any engineer could follow his work and improve on it. You're giving me your innovations freely? Knowledge is meant to be shared. That's how civilizations grow. For a long moment, Lyra was quiet. Then she smiled, the first completely open expression Marcus had seen from her. You are a remarkable human. Marcus Chun, I will not forget what you have done for me. Just remember to update your procedures manual, Marcus said. Sometimes the best way to solve a problem is to throw out the rulebook and start fresh. As Lyra prepared for departure the next morning, Marcus felt oddly sad to see her go. The past 3 weeks had been the most interesting of his life. Working with galactic technology, learning about the wider universe, and having someone to talk to had reminded him why he became an engineer in the first place. He had no idea that he had just changed the course of galactic history. Lyra never made it off the planet. 2 days after her ship was ready, Marcus's long-range sensors picked up incoming vessels. 3 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. They were sleek, dark, and clearly military. Imperial Navy, Lyra said, studying the sensor readings. Her face had gone pale. But they shouldn't have been able to track me here. Marcus watched the ships begin a systematic search pattern. They were moving slowly, scanning each planet and asteroid. Professional. Thorough? Friends of yours? No, these are Admiral Voss's ships. The man who betrayed me. Lyra's voice carried a cold anger that made Marcus look at her more carefully. If they find us, they will kill us both. Then we don't let them find us. Marcus began shutting down all the mining station's transmitters and power signatures. He activated stealth protocols that would make them look like just another piece of space debris. But the Imperial ships had advanced sensors. If they came close enough, they would detect life signs. We should run, Lyra said, heading for her rebuilt ship. Where? Your ship is fast, but can't outrun 3 Imperial cruisers. Lyra hesitated. No, not in a straight fight. Then we think smarter, not harder. Marcus pulled up the mining station schematics. This place has been my home for 3 years. I know every system, every weakness, and every advantage. If they want to find us, they'll have to work for it. Over the next 6 hours, Marcus turned the mining station into something completely different. He rerouted power systems to create false heat signatures. He programmed the automated mining drones to simulate a larger population. Most cleverly, he used the station's mineral processing equipment to create interference patterns that would confuse enemy sensors. Lyra watched him work with growing amazement. You're turning a mining operation into a fortress. I'm turning a mining operation into a puzzle. They'll spend so much time figuring out what they're looking at, they won't think to look deeper. The first Imperial ship entered orbital range that evening. Marcus and Lyra watched from the station's hidden observation post as the massive vessel passed overhead. It was 3 times larger than any human ship Marcus had ever seen, bristling with weapons and sensor arrays. "Beautiful," Marcus murmured. "Beautiful?" Lyra stared at him. "That ship carries enough firepower to level a continent." "Exactly. Look at those weapon placements. See how they're arranged for maximum firepower forward and to the sides. That means they have blind spots above and below the main hull. And those sensor arrays are powerful, but they're designed to detect large targets. Something small and close might slip past them." Lyra began to see what he was seeing. "You're analyzing their weaknesses. Everything has weaknesses. Even Imperial technology." Marcus pointed to the ship's engines. "Those are impressive, but they're also predictable. I bet they follow standard Imperial power management protocols." Which means... He trailed off, lost in thought. Lyra had seen this expression before, when Marcus was working through a particularly difficult engineering problem. But now he was applying that same analytical thinking to military tactics. The Imperial ship completed its first scan and moved on. But Marcus knew they would be back. The interference he had created would confuse their senses, but it would also make them curious. They would want to investigate more closely. "We need to be ready for their next pass," he said. Marcus spent the night building something he hoped he would never have to use. He took the mining station's main drill, designed for cutting through solid rock, and connected it to the station's power grid. Then he added targeting sensors from the ore processing system and a guidance computer he cobbled together from spare parts. "What is that?" Lyra asked when she found him testing the device the next morning. "Emergency excavation equipment," Marcus replied innocently. Lyra looked at the massive drill pointed toward space. "That's a weapon. It's a mining tool with an expanded operational envelope. You built a planet-based cannon." Marcus shrugged. "I built a solution to a problem. If those ships come back and try to land troops, this will discourage them." The Imperial ships returned that afternoon, this time all 3 together. They took positions around the planet and began intensive scans. Marcus's interference patterns were working, but he could tell the Imperial commanders were getting suspicious. That's when Lyra surprised him. "Signal them," she said suddenly. "What?" "Open a communication channel. I want to speak with Admiral Voss directly." Marcus stared at her. "That seems like a bad idea. Won't that tell them exactly where we are?" "Yes, but it will also tell me something important." Lyra's voice had changed. The easy camaraderie of the past weeks was gone, replaced by something harder and more commanding. "Open the channel, Marcus." "Trust me." Marcus activated the communication system. Within minutes, the main screen showed the bridge of an Imperial cruiser. A tall man in an elaborate uniform appeared. His face was sharp and calculating, with the look of someone used to being obeyed without question. "Admiral Voss," Lyra said calmly. The man's eyes widened. "Impossible. You died in the attack." "Clearly not. Though I'm curious how you found me here." Voss smiled coldly. "Your escape pod had a tracking device. Did you really think we would let you run without being able to follow?" Marcus felt anger flare in his chest. They had been hunted from the beginning. Lyra's crash hadn't been bad luck. It had been a trap. "I want to offer you terms," Voss continued. Surrender now, and your death will be quick. Continue to resist, and I will make it last for days." Lyra laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "You always were dramatic, Admiral. But you've made a mistake." "What mistake?" "You assumed I was helpless here. You assumed this was just another primitive world where you could do as you pleased." Lyra's voice carried an authority that made both men listen. "You were wrong." She gestured to Marcus. "This is Marcus Chun, human engineer. For the past 3 weeks, he's been preparing for your arrival. Would you like to see what human engineering can accomplish when motivated?" Marcus took the cue. He activated every system he had built over the past few days. Suddenly, the Imperial sensors were flooded with false readings. The mining stations seemed to multiply into dozens of installations. Automated drones began broadcasting signals that suggested a much larger population. Most impressive of all, the modified mining drill powered up with an energy signature that made the Imperial ships' computers scream warnings about incoming weapons fire. Voss's confident expression faltered. "What? How is this possible?" "Human ingenuity, Admiral," Lyra replied. "Something your intelligence networks seem to have underestimated." Marcus was watching the sensor readings from the Imperial ships. Their captains were confused and worried. They had expected to find a single crashed survivor, not a fully militarized installation that seemed to have appeared from nowhere. "This is impossible," Voss said. "You've been here for weeks. You couldn't have built these defenses." "I didn't build defenses," Marcus said, speaking for the first time. "I built solutions. Your ships are impressive, Admiral, but they're designed to fight other galactic powers using galactic tactics. They're not designed to handle someone who doesn't follow your rules." To prove his point, Marcus activated one of his favorite tricks. The mining station's gravity manipulators, normally used to process asteroids, created a localized gravity well that pulled one of the Imperial ships slightly off course. The ship's autopilot corrected quickly, but the message was clear. Human technology could affect Imperial vessels in ways they hadn't anticipated. Voss's face had gone red with anger. "I don't care what primitive tricks you've learned. I have 3 ships and enough firepower to turn that entire continent into glass." "Yes," Lyra agreed calmly. "But can you do it before my friend here disables your ships? Human engineering is very creative when it comes to finding vulnerabilities." Marcus smiled and began targeting the Imperial ship's power systems with modified mining lasers. He didn't fire, but the targeting sensors locked on and began analyzing weak points. The Imperial ship's computers detected the targeting and began evasive maneuvers. "The choice is yours, Admiral," Lyra continued. "Leave this system now or discover how resourceful humans can be when protecting something they value." For a long moment, the channel was silent. Then Voss spoke, his voice tight with rage. "This isn't over. I will return with a full battle fleet." "I'm sure you will," Lyra replied. "But you won't find us here." The communication ended. Within an hour, the 3 Imperial ships had jumped back to faster-than-light travel, leaving the system empty. Marcus slumped in his chair. "Well, that was terrifying." Lyra was staring at him with an expression he couldn't read. "You stood up to an Imperial Admiral. Do you understand what you just did? I protected someone who needed help. Same thing I've been doing for 3 weeks. No, Marcus. What you just did was declare war on the Terrakian Empire." The way she said made Marcus look at her more carefully. There was something in her voice, in her posture, that he had never noticed before. Authority, command, the absolute certainty of someone used to being obeyed by millions. "Lyra," he said slowly, "just who exactly are you?" Lyra was quiet for a long time. She stood at the observation window, looking out at the stars where the Imperial ships had disappeared. When she finally spoke, Her voice was different, heavier, weighted with responsibility. Marcus was only beginning to understand. My full name is Liraleastrina Callback III, Empress of the Terrakian Empire, Sovereign of the Orion Arm, and Protector of the Eastern Spiral. Marcus stared at her. You're what now? I rule 3 galaxy arms and over 10,000 worlds. The Empire has existed for 800 years. One have been its leader for 23 of them. So when you said you were a warrior, I am a warrior. Every empress must earn her throne through combat. But I am also the supreme commander of 4 billion troops and the ultimate authority over more people than your species has ever produced. Marcus sat down heavily. You're the Galactic Empress. The actual Empress? Yes. And Admiral Voss? My most trusted military advisor until 6 weeks ago. He convinced half the Imperial Council that I was leading the Empire to ruin. They planned to assassinate me during a state dinner and install Voss as Emperor. Lyra's hands clenched into fists. My personal guard died buying me time to escape. Marcus rubbed his forehead. 3 weeks of working together, sharing meals, fixing equipment side by side, and she had been the ruler of most of the known galaxy. You could have told me. Would it have changed anything? I would have built you a better ship. Despite everything, Lyra smiled. That's very human of you. I'm serious. If I had known you needed to run an empire, I would have added better communication systems. Probably some kind of portable government setup. Marcus was already thinking through the technical challenges. How do you normally manage 10,000 worlds anyway? Quantum communication networks, autonomous regional governors, and a lot of trust in the system working as designed. Right. And now you're cut off from all of that because you're presumed dead. Exactly. Which means Voss has probably announced my death and claimed emergency powers. Within days, he'll be the new emperor. Marcus stood up and began pacing. Okay, so we need to get you back to prove you're alive and reclaim your throne. But Voss knows where we are now. He'll be back with more ships. Many more ships. A full battle fleet consists of 50 capital ships and 200 support vessels. Lyra watched Marcus pace. We can't fight that kind of force. We can't fight it conventionally, Marcus agreed. But I've been thinking about this wrong. We don't need to win a battle. We just need to get you home. The Imperial capital is heavily defended. Even if we could reach it, Voss will have control of the orbital defenses. Marcus stopped pacing. What if we don't go to the capital? What if we make the capital come to us? Over the next several hours, Marcus explained his plan. It was audacious, risky, and completely contrary to every military principle Lyra had learned. It was also the kind of thinking that might actually work. You want to broadcast my location to the entire galaxy, Lyra said slowly. To the entire Empire. Full spectrum transmission. Every communication channel we can access. You make a public announcement that you're alive and calling for support. Voss will have to respond publicly. He'll bring every ship he has to destroy the transmission source. Probably. But you'll be broadcasting from the most secure, well-defended position in the Empire. Where? Marcus grinned. Your own throne room. The plan required perfect timing and a lot of luck. First, they would use Marcus's modifications to infiltrate Imperial space. The hybrid ship could now change its energy signature, making it appear to be anything from a cargo vessel to a diplomatic transport. More importantly, the adaptive navigation system could find routes that avoided patrol ships .second. They would use the chaos caused by Voss's coup to their advantage. With the Empress presumed dead, regional governors would be choosing sides. Some would support Voss, others would resist. The confusion would give them opportunities. Finally, they would strike at the Imperial capital when Voss least expected it, during his coronation ceremony. With most of the fleet deployed to hunt for threats, the capital's defenses would be at minimum strength, that it took them 2 days to reach Imperial space. Lyra's ship, with Marcus's modifications, moved through hyperspace along routes that shouldn't have been possible. The human-designed navigation system found gaps in patrol patterns that traditional Imperial systems would have missed. "Your modifications are remarkable," Lyra said, watching the navigation display. "The ship is thinking 3 steps ahead of any pursuit." "Human chess strategy applied to galactic navigation," Marcus replied. "Always have a backup plan for your backup plan." When they finally dropped back into normal space near the Imperial capital, they found exactly what Marcus had predicted. The massive city world of Imperius Prime was in chaos. Ships filled the orbital lanes, carrying officials fleeing to safer systems. News broadcasts spoke of rebellion in the outer territories and uncertainty about succession. Admiral Voss had indeed claimed the throne, but his rule was not going smoothly. "Perfect," Marcus said, studying the sensor readings. "Half the Imperial fleet is scattered across the galaxy, dealing with uprisings. The other half is here providing security for his coronation." "Which happens tomorrow," Lyra added grimly. They made their approach during the planet's night cycle, using the shadow of the largest moon for cover. Marcus had programmed the ship to mimic the energy signature of a garbage transport, allowing them to slip past the orbital defenses unnoticed. The Imperial Palace was a massive structure that could be seen from orbit. It housed not just the throne room, but the entire government apparatus of the Empire. Getting inside would normally be impossible, but Marcus had spent 2 days studying the building's schematics. "Service tunnels," he explained as they landed in an abandoned warehouse district. "Every building this size needs maintenance access. The tunnels will get us close to the throne room without going through security checkpoints." They made their way through the Undercity, following maintenance maps that Marcus had downloaded from public records. The service tunnels were exactly where he expected them to be, and just as poorly guarded. "Your people are very trusting of their infrastructure," Marcus observed as they climbed through a ventilation shaft. "The palace has been secure for 800 years. No one expects attack from the sewers. No one expects attack from the sewers until someone attacks from the sewers." They emerged in a storage room 3 levels below the main throne room. Marcus immediately began setting up his transmission equipment, while Lyra prepared for what would either be her triumphant return or her final public appearance. "Ready?" Marcus asked, activating the broadcasting array he had built from ship components and stolen communication gear. Lyra nodded. She looked every inch an empress now, wearing the formal robes they had recovered from her ship and carrying the ceremonial sword that had been her great-grandmother's. Marcus began the transmission. Every communication channel in the Empire suddenly carried the same signal. In throne rooms and meeting halls across the galaxy, screens lit up with the image of their empress. "Citizens of the Empire," Lyra began, her voice carrying the authority of absolute command. "I am Empress Lirale, and I am not dead." The reaction was immediate. Across the palace, alarms began sounding. Security forces ran through corridors, trying to locate the transmission source. In the throne room above them, Admiral Voss's coronation ceremony ground to a halt. 6 weeks ago, Admiral Voss attempted to murder me and seize control of the Empire. He failed. I have returned to reclaim my throne and restore order to our civilization. Marcus monitored the communication networks. The broadcast was being received across the galaxy. On thousands of worlds, people were seeing their empress alive and defiant. "I call upon all loyal citizens to reject the usurper's rule. I call upon the fleet to remember their oaths to the rightful government. And I call upon Admiral Voss to surrender himself for trial." The transmission ended. Within minutes, they could hear boots in the corridors above as security forces searched for them. That should get their attention. Marcus said. Yes. Now we wait to see who comes looking for us. First, they didn't have to wait long. The storage room door exploded inward, and Imperial guards poured through. But these guards wore the red and gold of the Empress's personal legion, not Voss's black and silver. Your Majesty, the lead guard said, dropping to one knee. We have come to escort you home. Lyra smiled. Captain Thorne. I wondered if you had survived the coup. Many of us did, Majesty. We've been waiting for your return. The loyal guards escorted them through passages Marcus hadn't even known existed. The palace was riddled with secret routes and hidden chambers. Within minutes, they stood at the entrance to the throne room. Voss is inside, Captain Thorne reported. He has about 50 supporters with him, but most of the court is neutral. They're waiting to see who wins. Then let's not disappoint them, Lyra replied. The throne room doors opened, and the Empress walked in. The effect was electric. Half the assembled nobles immediately knelt. The other half looked uncertainly between Lyra and Admiral Voss, who stood frozen on the steps leading to the Imperial throne. Admiral Voss, Lyra said, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. I believe you are sitting in my chair. Voss recovered quickly. Guards, arrest the pretender. But his guards hesitated. This was clearly the real Empress. Alive and calm, the restoration of the Empire took 3 days. Marcus watched from the guest quarters as Empress. Lorelei rebuilt her government with the same methodical precision he used to repair broken machinery. She contacted loyal governors, recalled scattered fleet units, and systematically dismantled Admiral Voss's network of supporters. It was impressive. But Marcus found himself missing the simple conversations they had shared in his workshop. Here in the Imperial Palace, surrounded by ceremony and protocol, Lyra seemed different. More distant. More like the ruler of 10,000 worlds, and less like the woman who had helped him sort spare parts. On the third day, she summoned him to a private audience. The room was smaller than the throne room, but still enormous by human standards. Ancient tapestries covered the walls, depicting 8 centuries of Imperial history. Lyra sat behind a desk made from a single piece of crystallized starlight, reviewing reports from across the galaxy. Marcus, she said, looking up when he entered. Please, sit. We have much to discuss. He took the chair across from her desk. How are you holding up? Running a galactic empire seems like hard work. Lyra smiled, the first relaxed expression he had seen from her since they reached the capital. It is but necessary work. The coup caused more damage than I initially realized. 6 outer systems declared independence. 3 governors used the chaos to settle old territorial disputes. And the treasury is missing about 40 billion credits. Sounds like you need better oversight systems. I need many things. Which brings me to why I asked you here. Lyra leaned back in her chair. Marcus Chen, you have rendered the Empire a service beyond measure. Without your help, I would be dead, and Admiral Voss would be ruling through fear and incompetence. Name your reward. Anything within my power to grant is yours. Marcus was quiet for a moment, thinking. Can I ask you something first? Of course. Why did you really escape to that mining station? I mean, the whole galaxy is full of planets. Why did you end up on mine? Lyra hesitated. The tracking device in my escape pod was programmed to find the nearest inhabited world. Your mining station was the only sign of intelligent life in that system. But you could have gone anywhere else first. You chose to run to the edge of civilized space instead of calling for help. Why? Because I wasn't sure who I could trust. After the betrayal, I didn't know how deep the conspiracy went. Marcus nodded slowly. And now? Now I know it was deeper than I thought. Half my senior staff was compromised. 3 of my most trusted advisors were feeding information to Voss. The systems I'd relied on for 800 years nearly destroyed the Empire. So you need new systems. I need better systems. More adaptable ones. Lyra looked at him carefully. Which brings me back to your reward. Marcus had been thinking about this conversation for 3 days. He had an idea, but he wasn't sure how the Empress would react to it. I want permission to establish a human engineering course within the Empire, he said finally. Not as subjects or servants, but as partners. Lyra raised an eyebrow. Explain. Marcus leaned forward, his enthusiasm growing as he spoke. Your technology is incredible, but it's stagnant. You've optimized everything for efficiency and tradition. When something breaks, you follow established repair procedures. When you need innovation, you consult ancient databases. You've created a perfect system for doing things exactly as they've always been done. And you think that's wrong? I think it's limiting. Human technology isn't as advanced as yours, but it's adaptive. We design things to work under unexpected conditions. We build in redundancies and backup systems. When our established procedures don't work, we throw them out and try something new. Marcus gestured toward the palace around them. This coup succeeded because Voss followed your own protocols perfectly. He used established procedures for emergency succession. He activated legitimate security measures. He even had the legal authority to declare you dead based on incomplete evidence. Your system worked exactly as designed, and it nearly destroyed you. Lyra was listening intently. Continue. Humans would have built in safeguards against that kind of manipulation. Multiple confirmation requirements, distributed authority, adaptive verification protocols. We assume that someone will try to break the system, so we design it to be resilient against attack. You want to redesign imperial governance? I want to help you think about problems differently. You have resources and knowledge that humanity can barely imagine. We have approaches to problem solving that could revolutionize how you use those resources. Imagine what we could accomplish together. Lyra stood and walked to the window overlooking the capital city. Millions of lights stretched to the horizon, representing billions of people across thousands of worlds. Our empire. You realize what you're suggesting? Full partnership between humanity and the Terrakian Empire would change everything. Trade, technology, politics, culture. Nothing would be the same, I know. It would also make your species a target. Not everyone in the galaxy approves of the Empire. If humans become our allies, you inherit our enemies. Marcus shrugged. We've handled enemies before. Besides, someone has to take the first step. Lyra turned back to him. Why do you want this, Marcus? You could ask for wealth, territory, titles. You could live like a king for the rest of your life. Because it's the right thing to do. You showed me a galaxy full of possibilities. I want to help humanity become part of it, not just another species waiting to be discovered. For a long moment, the room was quiet. Then Lyra smiled, the warm expression he remembered from their time working together. The Imperial Council will resist this proposal. Probably. The bureaucracy will claim it violates 800 years of precedent. Definitely. Other species will protest that humans are receiving preferential treatment. Almost certainly. And you're asking me to do it anyway. Marcus met her gaze. I'm asking you to do what you know is right, regardless of what established procedures say you should do. Lyra laughed. You're using my own logic against me. I learned from an excellent teacher. She returned to her desk and activated a recording device. Let the record show that by imperial decree, I hereby establish the Human Galactic Engineering Initiative. Marcus Chen of Earth is appointed as its first director, with full authority to recruit human personnel and allocate imperial resources for joint research projects. Marcus blinked. Just like that? Just like that. Though I should warn you, the actual implementation will take months of negotiations with various governmental bodies. I'll manage. I'm sure you will. Lyra deactivated the recorder. There's one condition, though. What's that? I want you to stay here for the first year. Help me redesign some of our more critical systems using human principles. Consider it a personal favor from someone who owes you her life. Marcus thought about his quiet mining station, his workshop full of broken equipment, and 3 years of solitude. Then he thought about libraries full of galactic knowledge, workshops equipped with technology beyond his imagination, and the chance to help build something entirely new. I think I can do that. 6 months later, Marcus stood in his new workshop in the lower levels of the Imperial Palace. It was 3 times the size of his old setup and filled with a fascinating mixture of human tools and galactic technology. He was training the first class of Imperial engineers in human problem-solving methodology when Lyra arrived. "How are they doing?" she asked, watching a group of alien technicians try to repair a power coupling using nothing but spare parts and creativity. Better than expected. It turns out that once you give someone permission to ignore the manual, they come up with remarkable solutions. They watched as one of the students, a reptilian engineer from the Keth system, successfully jury-rigged a power conduit using components from 3 different technologies. The device shouldn't have worked according to Imperial standards, but it was running at 112% efficiency. Impressive, Lyra said. And the governmental reforms? Also progressing. The new verification protocols passed the Imperial Council last week. The distributed authority structure should be implemented by next month. And the adaptive response systems are already showing results. Any resistance? Less than expected. Turns out that when you explain the reasoning behind changes, instead of just issuing orders, people are more willing to accept them. Lyra nodded. Another human insight? Another human insight. They walked through the workshop together, observing the controlled chaos of collaborative innovation. Human engineers worked alongside galactic technicians, sharing knowledge and creating hybrid solutions that neither species could have developed alone. Do you ever regret it? Lyra asked. Leaving your quiet mining station for all this complexity? Marcus considered the question. Sometimes. But then I remember what you told me when we first met. About warriors and codes of honor. You said that some things are worth fighting for. And this is worth fighting for? Marcus gestured at the workshop around them, where dozens of species were learning to think in new ways and solve ancient problems with fresh perspectives. This is worth building for Dot, outside the palace. Across the capital city, and beyond to the stars themselves, the galaxy was changing. UN merchant ships now traveled Imperial trade routes, carrying goods.